Struggling with trust and boundary setting. My wife 30F and I 30M have been a rough few months. Lately I've been having anxiety and struggling with the line between trust and setting healthy boundaries and wanted to seek some advice. In short, my wife has become really close with a male coworker, often going out being a drinking one-on-one for 5+ hours. She assures me that it's not like that and she's really disappointed that I would even think she would be unfaithful. I don't know where the line is between overreacting trust issues and setting healthy boundaries. See below for longer context. My wife and I moved across the country 3 years ago for her work. Her office environment has become really stressful and toxic with managers that gaslight and undermine her team. She's become really close with a male teammate. Over the pandemic he and his girlfriend hung out with us a lot. They've showed us cool places around the city, camped with us for a couple's weekend a few times. On one of these trips last year, my wife and her coworker stayed up until 5 a.m. drinking and talking when the rest of us went to sleep. It gave me some anxiety to see that at the time, but I brushed it off. A few months ago, my wife and I decided we wanted to move back to be closer to family, and she found a job back home. Once this was a done deal, things started to change between her and her coworker. They hung out much more frequently. She said she wanted to maximize the time she had here with friends, but didn't do that with her other friends and coworkers. Early November, the three of us get a couple drinks on a Sunday night. I decide to leave to go make dinner and get to bed by a decent time, but the two of them stay out. I'm a little peeved by this, but she wants to keep socializing. I wake up at 2 a.m. and find that she's still not home. She won't answer my texts or calls, so I start to drive to the few usual hangs to look for her. She eventually answers a call at 3 a.m. and drunkenly slurs that she's going to get an Uber home. I insist on picking her up, but she hangs up. Finally she gets home at 5 a.m. saying something bad happened, that her coworker left and a couple guys at the bar were harassing her. She left, didn't know where she was, and called her coworker who helped her get an Uber home. During a later discussion, she told me another detail that she initially omitted. She went back to his place to sober up before getting the Uber. During this conversation, she says she doesn't want to drink anymore. I ask what I can do to support her, if she needs me to check in and make sure she's okay. She's floored that I would even offer because it's her mistakes. Later that week, she goes out with her coworker after work, but after a few hours I get antsy and show up at the bar where they are. She's frustrated by this but says I can't be mad after I point out the support system I offered. 2 weeks later, same story. We're all hanging out in a big group on a Sunday afternoon. After we get back home, she immediately turns around and goes back out the door saying her coworker wants to get drinks. I feel weird about it but don't have the time to process it before she's gone. This time, she doesn't come home until the next morning. I tried calling numerous times through the night. She eventually answers a text asking if she's alive at 4 a.m. with yes. I'm alive but doesn't answer any more calls or texts. At this point I've packed a bag ready to leave to go stay at a hotel and feared the worst, but she makes it home around 8 a.m. before I've left. She said she got too drunk and decided it would be best to stay the night on her coworker's couch. I tell her I'm not okay with her sleeping in another man's home, that this severely damages my trust in her, and that I need her to communicate with me where she is and when she expects to be home in these situations. She's extremely apologetic about it, says she doesn't want to drink again. She meets her coworker a couple days later to tell him allegedly that she can't drink with him anymore, that she can't be responsible. A mere 1 week later, She goes out with the girls from work after work on a Monday. 11 p.m. comes and goes, I get worried, and find her at a different bar, alone with the coworker. I make a scene and eventually get her to come home with me. She's furious that I won't trust her, says maybe marriage isn't for me, and that she can't be policed like this. I insisted on being updated on when she changes location when going out if nothing else, for safety purposes, but she doesn't even see the point in that. The next morning, we make up. I try to understand her social needs and look inward at myself thinking maybe I just have trust and jealousy issues. A couple more times over the next month, I become okay with her drinking with her coworker and she always makes it home by a decent time. On one occasion that I said I didn't feel comfortable about it, she obliged and stayed home. I can't shake feeling off about their whole relationship. Whenever I bring it up, my wife gets frustrated that I don't trust her. I get frustrated that she doesn't even remember prior conversations we had because she was too drunk. Next week, she's going back to that city to visit her friends and go to a bridal shower. I know she'll see her good male coworker, and I should be okay with this. Should I insist that they don't meet alone? She has said that she gets along with him best when alone because he's more open and acts different than when in groups. Should I insist that it not involve alcohol? That seems silly to me, but I don't know how to find the line between feeling overly jealous and setting healthy boundaries. I decided I want to see an individual therapist to help me deal with these feelings and anxieties. We've seen a couples therapist online which felt a bit generic. They gave us some good strategies on how to approach conflict and strengthen our relationship, but it never really gave me closure or understanding of the events up until now. The therapist didn't agree with my wife's behavior, but she dismissed him as being old-fashioned. Redditor's reactions update after. Redditor 1, it's never like that and he's always just a friend. Trust your gut. There is a reason you are feeling uncomfortable. There are thousands of infidelity stories on here that start out just like this. She's a 30-year-old wife. She shouldn't be hanging out in bars wife other men one-on-one. That is just asking for trouble. I know I will get downvoted for that, but that's how I feel. Op answer, I keep getting this as advice. But what do I do? Keep rehashing the same tired argument. Snoop for proof. I feel an icky ethical dilemma about this one. Redditor 2, you're going to have to get angry. Stop the chats and allowing the gaslighting. Pack a bag and tell her to contact you when she's ready to tell you the truth. Then block her for a few days. She needs to stew on this and be faced with real consequences. You're allowing this by never taking action. What you've described is at least an emotional affair. The fact she refuses to end being alone with another man for hours on end and almost always ends up back at his place is enough proof. She's going to continue to manipulate you until you refuse to allow it. Op answer, that's a tough pill to swallow, but feels like actual valid action I can take. Thanks. Redditor 3, dude, this story is riddled with red flags all over the place. Basically everything she's doing with this guy is inappropriate for a married woman. I'm surprised you've hung in there as long as you have. If my wife did this, and just came home late once from a public place, we'd have a very serious chat about it never happening again. If it happened a second time, that would be the end of the marriage. If she ever stayed the night away from home and another guy was involved even remotely, there wouldn't be a second chance on that, automatic divorce. At this point, if I were in your shoes, I would assume she's been regularly going to bed with this guy for quite some time. She is not cut out to be a wife. She sounds like an alcoholic who is made for the streets. Kick her out. Divorce this trashy woman and move on. And when you start dating again, set boundaries early when exclusivity is established. Do not ever tolerate your woman going out alone with other men. This is what it leads to. Redditor follow-up. Also, she is not 21. Doesn't need go out late at night drinking with other women, and not coming home. It's ridiculous. She needs to be coming home to you ASAP as the default, always. Any deviation from that is a big red flag unless you want to have that sort of semi-open relationship, where you both flirt with other people and sometimes things happen. You would establish that ahead of time. Update, I 30M finally got truth and pried out confessions from my wife 30F of 5 years that she's been having an affair for months. Still a throwaway, but see the post history for context. I finally got some trickle truths last night from my wife. I set a clear boundary with her that she wasn't to drink alone with her friend back in the south when she went to visit for a bridal shower last weekend. We recently moved up north. She told me her story of what she did that weekend, purely innocent. I got the suggestion to contact the dude's girlfriend. I didn't want to at first, but boy am I glad I did. I asked if she ever felt off about these two. She says, yeah, we've talked about it, but he swears they're just good friends. She mentioned she wasn't happy that my wife slept at his place this past weekend. Whoa, what? Then I confronted my wife, who doubled down on the same lies. Then I showed her the receipts. She then changes her story to okay, I hung out with him but we didn't drink and you said that was okay. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd be upset, unlike you were just drinking in a group. You think it's okay to go home with this dude just because you didn't keep drinking. Then it was I don't remember where we went, I was too drunk. After a lot of prying, pointing out lies and inconsistencies, it became we kissed. Then we made out for an hour and then I have feelings for him I don't know what to do with, and then we kissed back in November, too. I've been having so much anxiety since seeing all the red flags since November. Finally getting some validation after all the gaslighting is a huge relief. It feels 100% better to ask around and risk being wrong and looking like an a-shole than to enable the gaslighting and tear apart your mental health while doing it. Alcoholism is a BTCH and get some therapy to deal with it, but that's not an excuse for cheating. Redditor's reactions update after. Redditor 1, drop her like a hot potato. Redditor 2, adults don't have sleepovers to kiss. That is a bald-faced lie. Time to take your dignity back from that poor excuse of a woman and leave. Redditor follow-up, we were only meeting up for some kisses. I remember reading somewhere else this exact thing, adults don't kiss, they FCK. Redditor 3, no kids no brainer. She's been ducking him for months. Divorce her. You need support. A lawyer. Honestly, I felt bad for you reading your last post. I can't understand how you let her do any of the things she was doing and didn't throw her out. Don't be her doormat, man. She's not worth it. And you certainly didn't get the truth. Update, wife 30F of 5 years cheated with co-worker. Though it's still anxiety inducing, it gets easier every day to talk about being cheated on. Some commented on the original post asking for an update a while back, and I'm at the point now where I can share what happened and what I've learned. Most of this is going to be little nuggets of experience. As of last week and 5 months after filing, I am officially, legally divorced. She begged me not to go through with divorce, got therapy to help her with her personal issues, but she ended up moving out in May and back to the city we left where her co-worker is. Gee, I wonder why. I've been dating someone for a couple months. And man, I gotta say, getting back out there does wonders for self-esteem and anxiety. While I once felt like my wife was the one, and maybe she was at that point in my life, in retrospect we weren't that compatible. Now I'm having much more amazing sex, feeling more supported and less judged for being myself, and have more time for myself and to do what I want. She was relatively flexible in negotiating the settlement as long as it was equitable. I took out a personal loan to buy her out of her share of the house, and I'm making extra money to pay it off. Divorce is expensive and complicated. More expensive than you think. We had a relatively simple, amicable split with no kids, a newly purchased house and little bit of retirement accounts to divvy up, and I still racked up over $10,000 in legal fees, and it took months longer than I thought it would. I now have so much knowledge about divorce, estate and alimony laws in different states, and I hope I never need to use it again. Prenups may feel icky, but if I ever get married again I'll consider one. Time helps. Every passing day made things a little bit easier to deal with. Therapy also helps. In my case, practicing different meditation techniques with a therapist gave me good tools to bring myself back to center whenever I got pissed off or anxious. Find your support, people. I have a friend who had also been cheated on that has been a ducking enlightening bro through this whole ordeal. The other guy's now ex-girlfriend was also a great person to talk to and commiserate with. I've definitely learned a bit about human behaviors, and everyone commenting on my posts helped me see what I wanted to ignore. Adults don't get drunk alone together. Adults don't have sleepovers. Adults don't stay up all night with someone unless they wanna FCK. Beware of the trickle truth. Trust your gut. Don't be afraid to raise a little hell to get some answers if something feels off. Talk to her friends, and anyone who might be involved. The pick-me dance is real. As soon as you stop letting her have her cake and eat it too, she'll beg and cry and promise to do better. I probably have dozens of other nuggets I've gleaned from this city experience, and I'm always happy to share with those interested. Life is messy and people are often itty, but optimism that things will be better with time is a powerful thing. Redditor's reactions, story 2 after. Redditor 1, this is great mate, cheers. Redditor 2, the pick-me dance is real. As soon as you stop letting her have her cake and eat it too, she'll beg and cry and promise to do better. Are men up? So many men and women don't want to divorce even when their partner cheats, and I understand that. But, so many of them do the wrong things while trying to keep their marriage together. The pick-me dance fails more often than it works. Exposing the affair and standing up for yourself works out much better. One's partner will either get their head out of their ass or they won't. Shining a light on the affair by broadcasting it kills it faster than any other way. So does taking control of the situation. PS need to go on offense, not play defense. The saying that one must be willing to lose their marriage in order to save it so true. When a lying, cheating partner has to face and deal with consequences, it snaps them out of their affair fog quicker. Many times when their affair partner spouse finds out, they drop the affair partner as they are focusing on trying to save their own marriage, and then your lying, cheating partner finds out how little their affair partner really cares for them. Don't remain back on your heels, folks. Go on offense, don't play defense. Don't do the pick-me dance. Sorry this happened, glad to hear you are doing better. Best wishes to you going forward. Redditor 3, divorce is expensive and complicated. More expensive than you think. We had a relatively simple, amicable split with no kids, a newly purchased house and little bit of retirement accounts to divvy up, and I still racked up over $10,000 in legal fees, and it took months longer than I thought it would. I now have so much knowledge about divorce, estate and alimony laws in different states, and I hope I never need to use it again. Prenups may feel icky, but if I ever get married again I'll consider one. Having the knowledge is great, but it's better to never have to use it again, like you said. Look up if where you live now is common law. If it's not, just don't get married again and you'll be fine. Especially now that you have a better understanding of what to look out for. Then depending on where you are when it comes to kids, you could consider a vasectomy as well. Story 2, I caught my wife with her employee. I have been divorced for a year now and I am just now adjusting to being a free man. I was so sure of my great marriage that I thought we'd be happy no matter what. I'm here because this community made me feel better about what my ex-wife did to me. It's messed up, but I found my strength and self-worth again. But it's still a thing I hope others will see for themselves, like I did in my ex-wife's messed up actions. Me M34 and my ex-wife F32 were married for about 4 years. She was funny, smart, and fun to be around. We lived a good life because I worked as a technician at my job for 8 years and she was taken good care of. My wife always wanted to work for herself and was an ambitious person. Her previous jobs was being a club promoter and doing makeup tutorials. Somewhere around the time after we got married, my ex-wife went to an amusement park with her family, and I couldn't go because I had no more call-off days from work. When she came back, she told me her cousin told her about flipping houses. She really wanted to do it, and after looking up the market in our city, her cousin was right about it being a good idea. Since I was a good electrician, my ex-wife got her cousin Carlos to help since he had a background in this too, but couldn't get a job since he was a felon. It was a risk, but me and my ex-wife became successful in owning property. My ex-wife had one home she was renting, another she flipped to a lady who reached out to us about buying it from her. I was definitely proud of her because she did the research on this and really paid attention to what she needed to do for the little success we was having now. I was always ambitious and I think she got it from her father. He used to own a nice local restaurant down in Cartagena, and when he came to America, his friends took it off his hands. Every spring or summer, he would go down and fill just to help him out. My ex didn't want to admit it, but that's where I think she got this mindset from. Deep down I think she knew it was true. After taking on this career, she treated it was her baby. She made sure we did our best work and made sure we had what we needed, like computer software and a good tenant for the house we decided to rent out. It always helps to find somebody with kids. It was hard work, but we got it done. Especially since it was a family thing. She was even on top of marketing as well. She used her social media to advertise her business, and it worked since it looked real professional. In the pictures she looked like those typical ads you see on billboards and magazines with that big fake smile. She'd look just like them if wasn't for her curvaceous hips and juicy backside because of her Colombian descent. We had a good thing going with this. Things became messed up when she got her newest property to fix up. She became so successful she hired a crew to fix up the new property. The owner of the crew, Vince, was working there since I couldn't work on the house as much as she wanted me to thanks to my other job. They were good at what they did and my ex-wife with what they were doing. It got to the point where I didn't have to work on anything at all now that she had a crew work on it every other day. After a while of them being there, I noticed that my ex wasn't interacting with me anymore. We didn't hold any conversations anymore. She would stay in her office we have in our house and was always texting. She came in later as well, and when I asked where she was, she'd say she was checking out the property. I noticed that she had a buddy-buddy relationship with the crew as well, especially a guy named Lamar, who cracked jokes with her. I didn't mind at first because I thought it was better to have a good relationship with them. At home, however, I was definitely losing touch with my ex-wife at the time. She only talked to me about running errands, asked about the rent from her tenants, or if I was cooking that night. I even had to beg her for some sex, which she'd laugh and give every excuse in the book to not do it. This would frustrate me, but I eventually let it go. It got to the point where she seemed too wrapped up in her job, and I was just a workhorse. I finally figured out she might be cheating a month after the change happened. She had came home later in the evening. I knew she was going into the bedroom so she could change out of her business suit. I followed her to remind her it was her turn to cook dinner. She said she didn't and work start in about an hour. When she took off her pants, I saw a red mark on her right side of back end. I looked at the bruise and I felt a chill down my spine. She didn't even notice the bruise she had on her backside was there. I wanted to ask her about it, but something inside me screamed, "Don't say anything." If it got there the way I think it got there, she was only going to deny it and claim I was crazy. Believe it or not, I let it slide because I thought it must be some other explanation. A week later, I had saw the same bruise and another one on her lower back. This was super obvious that somebody was doing her, and leaving those marks. Even worse, the only people I knew had to be doing this was Vince's crew at the property she says she go to. One day after work, I decided to drive to the property since my wife said she was going to be there to check on everything. When I got there, Vince and the crew was working except for Lamar. He was too busy laughing and talking to my ex-wife. They looked surprised to see me coming in unannounced. Lamar asked me how I was doing, and that he hadn't seen me in a while, but he looked little nervous. I told him I just wanted to see how things was going, and my ex-wife show me around to see the progress. I talked to Vince about the property for a minute, but I kept my eye on my ex-wife and Lamar. After all that, I left and I was sure something might be going on with Lamar. When my wife got back, she seemed mad at me for stopping by without telling her. When I asked was there a reason I shouldn't, she dropped and went into her office. The next day I was super emotional, and I guess it was noticeable at work. One of our cleaners who I usually talk to asked me why I was acting all antisocial. I don't know why, but I told him my wife might be cheating on me with somebody on her crew, and he said he wasn't surprised. I asked him why he said that, and he said it was by the way I talked about her. He claimed that I always seemed like a simp. I started to disagree with him, and a co-worker came over and asked what we were talking about. He told him my situation and he got mad and told me to call her out and get the truth. I told him I planned to figure out her passcode and go through her iPhone, but our cleaner said he a better idea and buy some spy cameras. He said nowadays they look like anything and just install them in my house, and he convinced me to do it. After thinking all night about it, decided to buy them. After ordering them, I had our tenant pick them up after Amazon dropped them off and call me after that. When I got them, I set them up in my living room, the bedroom, and even on the property after I got off work. After I had everything linked up to my phone, they were set. I told my wife that I would have to stay late at my work for a couple hours, and she said okay. After those few hard days, I decided to check the cameras and see what they picked up. Sure enough, I caught her in my living room clearly being done by Lamar. It was hard for me to see my wife clearly getting humbled by Lamar. He did everything from hair pulling to positions I never saw her do. They never did anything on the property, just our house. I was so furious I got on a phone with a lawyer a few hours later. After a couple days, I picked out my lawyer and filed. He told me not to do anything crazy, and I tried to do it all according to plan, but I lost control. After I got off work, my wife was sitting on the couch talking to a friend and she asked me to do some electrical work the next day to save time. I said I didn't feel like it and walked in the kitchen, clearly annoyed by her. My wife picked up on my anger and to stop acting lazy and contribute to our business, especially since she don't ask me for much anymore. I said it's funny how when she needs something it's our company, but when she don't it's just hers. Her and her friends started arguing with me and I just walked back in the kitchen to get a beer out the refrigerator. When I heard her making little snide comments about me, I just lost it. I decided to confront her about cheating. I walked back in the living room and asked them what they said because I couldn't hear them. My ex said she only asked me a question and I didn't have to flip out. I told her I'm not doing anything for her and she should ask Lamar to do it. Her friend asked who was Lamar, and my wife said nobody. I told her friend that Lamar was the guy that's doing her. My ex started denying it and saying I was crazy. I said if I'm crazy then she's dumb because I put some cameras in our room and our living room. Walking over to the TV stand, I picked up the camera that she thought was a phone charger and showed her it was a camera. She got angry and said she can't believe I did this, and I told her friend if she don't believe me, I got the footage on my phone. I pulled out my phone and started to show her, but my wife slapped down her friend's hand before I could even give it to her. Surprised at all this, she took my wife's hand and told me they were leaving, and I could still see my ex was in shock while they left. After that day, my ex tried her best to avoid me. She would always be at the house when she knew I was at work, and that was fine with me. But when the divorce papers came in, I finally texted her and told her to sign the paperwork, and that I'd leave it up on the kitchen counter. After coming back home from work, I saw she signed the paperwork. After a while, she decided to stay with her parents, and that's where she continued to stay during the divorce process. I thought my only gift was becoming a free man, but my lawyer gave me a lot more. Since my wife had a semi-successful business, she had to give me payments due to no prenup. When her lawyer explained this to her in court, she gave a look that could kill. I had just become an weight to her business. Sometime before the divorce proceedings, Vince called me to tell me he heard what happened and was sorry. He said he fired Lamar because when he questioned Lamar about it, Lamar yelled at him, and it started an argument that got him fired. It's funny because another crew called, and said he was sorry after Vince. He said Lamar would always flirt with my ex, and he said after a while he was bragging to the whole crew since the last 3 months that he was doing her. This surprised me because Vince said he didn't know about this, but he actually did. I haven't seen any of them since my first big payout, and I don't plan to. My ex moved into an apartment and I kept the house I bought. Our families have moved on too and haven't heard from them since they first had apologized to me. Recently snooped on her Facebook and there wasn't much activity on it. There are old picture of her with her friend at a restaurant or bar and she was smiling, looking super drunk. I thought posting here would make me mad, but I'm actually more depressed after writing this. My ex just turned out to be a user, and told me anything just to get her way. She used to at least appreciate what I did, but she got arrogant and now her business is temporarily crippled. She's going to be fine eventually, and I guess that's what's making me depressed. I appreciate this community, and I know it's a lot, but it helped me to open about all this. Stay emotionally safe. Redditors' reactions. Redditor 1. Is this a troll post by that weird dude who makes up stories and reuses names like Lamar? Didn't he already bang your wife when she would go visit him at your work? Redditor follow up, the simp threw me through a loop, because I don't know anyone over the age of 25 that uses that word. This reads like a weird fantasy. Redditor 2, fake again. Do not put fake stories. We are good at recognizing them now. Redditor 3, I knew it was fake after the co-worker called him a simp. The only people who are using this word are teenagers, early 20-year-old or incels. Op answer, the guy who called me a simp is younger than me. But I've heard some guys my age say it out anger,